Detective Inspector Marcus Thompson had served the Royal Protection Unit for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for what he witnessed during the autumn of 2018, standing at 6 feet, 2 inches with sharp gray eyes that missed nothing. Marcus had protected members of the royal family through scandals, threats, and public appearances. Yet the tension brewing within Kensington Palace walls presented a different kind of challenge entirely. The morning started like any other Tuesday. Marcus arrived at his post outside the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's private offices at precisely 7:30. The palace corridors hummed with the usual activity of staff preparing for another busy day of royal duties. Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, was scheduled for a charity visit to a children's hospital, while Prince William had meetings with his Earthshot. Prize Team. As Marcus checked his radio and reviewed the day's security briefing, he noticed something unusual. Sarah Mitchell, Catherine's private secretary, rushed past him with tear-stained cheeks and trembling hands. Sarah had worked for the royal household for 8 years and was known for her composed, professional demeanor. Seeing her this distressed immediately raised red flags in Marcus's mind. "Sarah, is everything all right?" Marcus called out gently, stepping away from his position. Sarah stopped abruptly, wiping her eyes quickly. "Oh, Marcus. Yes, everything's fine. Just a small matter with scheduling." Marcus had been trained to read people, and Sarah's body language told a completely different story. Her voice shook, her hands continued to tremble, and she avoided making direct eye contact. These were not the signs of someone dealing with a simple scheduling conflict. Before Marcus could probe further, the sound of raised voices echoed from down the corridor. The voices were coming from the direction of the Sussexes' temporary office space, which they used when visiting Kensington Palace for joint engagements with William and Catherine. "That is completely unacceptable," came a sharp, angry voice that Marcus recognized as belonging to the Duchess of Sussex. "I specifically requested that the briefing papers be prepared in a different format. This is not what I asked for, and frankly, it's embarrassing that this is the level of work being produced." Marcus moved closer, his protective instincts kicking in. He could hear another voice, much quieter and more apologetic, though he couldn't make out the exact words. The response seemed to anger the first voice even more. "I don't want to hear excuses. This needs to be fixed immediately, and I mean immediately. The level of incompetence I'm witnessing here is shocking. In America, this kind of work would never be tolerated." Marcus positioned himself at a distance where he could monitor the situation without appearing to eavesdrop. His role was to protect all members of the royal family, but he also had a responsibility to ensure the safety and well-being of palace staff. What he was hearing raised concerns about workplace treatment and potential harassment. The office door opened suddenly, and a young woman Marcus didn't recognize emerged. She appeared to be in her early 20s, probably a new assistant or intern. Her face was flushed red and she was clearly fighting back tears. She hurried down the corridor, clutching a stack of papers to her chest. This was the second palace employee Marcus had seen in distress within the span of 10 minutes. His 15 years of experience told him this was not a coincidence. Catherine emerged from her own office at that moment, dressed elegantly in a navy blue coat dress, ready for her hospital visit. She immediately noticed the young woman's distress and quickly approached her. "Are you all right, dear?" Catherine asked with genuine concern in her voice. Her warm, caring nature was one of the qualities that made her beloved by both staff and the public. The young woman looked up, surprised to see the future queen speaking to her directly. "Your Royal Highness, Yes, I'm fine. Just having a difficult morning." Catherine glanced toward Marcus, who gave her a subtle nod indicating he was aware of the situation. She had worked with Marcus long enough to understand his silent communications. "Would you like to talk about it?" "Sometimes sharing what's troubling us can help," Catherine offered kindly. The young woman glanced nervously toward the Sussex office, then back at Catherine. "It's nothing serious, Your Royal Highness. Just learning how different people prefer their work to be done." Marcus could see Catherine processing this information. Her experience in the royal household had taught her to read between the lines of what staff members said, and what they really meant, "I see. Well, if you ever need someone to talk to, my door is always open." "We're all part of the same team here," Catherine said. placing a gentle hand on the young woman's shoulder. As Catherine and Marcus headed toward the palace exit for her scheduled engagement, Marcus felt compelled to share his observations. "Ma'am, I've noticed some concerning behavior this morning. Two staff members have appeared quite distressed, and both incidents seem connected to the same office." Catherine nodded thoughtfully. "I noticed that too, Marcus. Keep an eye on things, will you? The well-being of our staff is incredibly important to both William and me." During the drive to the children's hospital, Marcus reflected on what he had witnessed. His role as a protection officer meant he was often privy to private moments and conversations within the royal household. He had seen how different family members treated staff, and there were clear patterns of behavior that distinguished good leadership from poor treatment. Prince William and Catherine were known throughout the palace for their respectful, kind treatment of everyone who worked for them. They remembered staff members' names, asked about their families, and always said please and thank you. They understood that the monarchy's reputation depended not just on public appearances, but on how they conducted themselves in private. The contrast with what Marcus had observed that morning was striking. The raised voice, the dismissive tone, and the visible distress of multiple staff members painted a troubling picture. As they arrived at the hospital, Marcus made a mental note to document his observations and discuss them with his supervisor. Protecting the royal family meant more than just ensuring their physical safety. It also meant protecting the institution of the monarchy from any behavior that could damage its reputation or harm the dedicated people who served it. The day was just beginning, and Marcus had a feeling that what he had witnessed was only the tip of a much larger iceberg. 3 weeks later, Marcus found himself facing a situation that would test every aspect of his training and judgment. The palace was buzzing with preparation for a major joint engagement between the two couples, a charity gala that would raise funds for mental health initiatives. The event was particularly important to both William and Catherine, who had made mental health awareness a cornerstone of their charitable work. Marcus arrived early that morning to conduct security sweeps and coordinate with the event planning team. As he walked through the palace corridors, he encountered James Richardson, a senior aide who had worked in the royal household for over a decade. James was known for his calm professionalism and ability to handle even the most complex royal protocols with grace. "Morning, James. How are preparations going for tonight's gala?" Marcus asked. James looked around nervously before responding, his usual confidence noticeably absent. "Well, there have been some challenges with the planning process. Some last-minute changes to the program and seating arrangements." Marcus noticed the careful way James chose his words. In his experience, when seasoned palace staff spoke about challenges and last-minute changes, there was usually more to the story. "Anything I need to be aware of from a security perspective?" Marcus inquired. Before James could respond, the sound of an argument erupted from the planning office down the hall. Marcus could hear multiple voices, but one was clearly dominant and increasingly agitated. "This is completely wrong. I told you yesterday that I wanted to be seated next to the ambassador, not across from him. And why is my speech scheduled after Catherine's? That makes no sense given the hierarchy of the evening's program." Marcus and James exchanged glances. The voice belonged to the Duchess of Sussex, and her tone was becoming more confrontational by the minute. "Furthermore, I specifically requested that the flowers on our table be white roses, not pink ones. These details matter, and the fact that no one seems capable of following simple instructions is frankly insulting." Through the open office door, Marcus could see several staff members standing around a large table covered with seating charts, programs, and floral arrangements. One woman was frantically making notes while another person appeared to be on the phone, presumably trying to make the demanded changes. "Ma'am, we can certainly adjust the seating arrangement," came a diplomatic voice Marcus recognized as belonging to Helen Crawford, the palace's chief event coordinator. However, the speech order was determined based on the charitable focus of the evening and Catherine's work with mental health initiatives. "Are you suggesting that my work isn't as important?" The response was sharp and defensive. I've been involved in mental health advocacy long before joining this family. The assumption that Catherine should automatically take precedence is exactly the kind of thinking that needs to change. Marcus watched as James visibly winced at the exchange. The hierarchy within royal engagements was a complex but well-established protocol that had been developed over decades. Catherine, as the future queen and someone who had been working on mental health issues for several years, was the natural choice to deliver the keynote address. Helen's response was measured and professional. "Of course not, ma'am. Your contributions are invaluable. We're simply following the established protocols for this particular event. However, we're happy to discuss adjustments that work for everyone involved." "Established protocols," came the sarcastic reply. "Yes, I'm becoming quite familiar with how things are established around here. Perhaps it's time some of these protocols were updated to reflect the modern world." Marcus found himself in an increasingly uncomfortable position. As a protection officer, he was trained to remain neutral and professional in all circumstances. However, what he was witnessing went beyond simple disagreements about event planning. The tone and content of the conversation suggested deeper issues with authority, respect, and the fundamental understanding of how the royal household operated. At that moment, Catherine appeared in the corridor, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, clearly having come from a more relaxed morning at home. She immediately sensed the tension in the air and looked questioningly at Marcus and James. "Is everything all right?" she asked quietly. James looked uncomfortable, unsure of how to respond diplomatically. Marcus made a quick decision to provide Catherine with the information she needed without appearing to gossip or take sides. "There seems to be some discussion about tonight's arrangements, ma'am. Nothing that can't be sorted out, I'm sure." Catherine nodded, understanding immediately that the situation required careful handling. She had dealt with similar challenges during her years in the royal family and had learned the importance of addressing conflicts before they escalated. "Further, perhaps I should speak with everyone involved," Catherine suggested. "Sometimes these things are easier to resolve with a quick conversation." As Catherine approached the planning office, Marcus positioned himself nearby, his protective instincts heightened by the obvious tension in the air. His role was becoming increasingly complex as he found himself not just protecting against external threats, but also managing internal conflicts that could potentially damage the royal family's reputation. The conversation in the office became quieter as Catherine entered, her natural diplomacy and calming presence immediately changing the atmosphere. Marcus couldn't hear the exact words being exchanged, but he could observe body language and tone within minutes. Catherine emerged from the office with a slight smile, followed by Helen and the other staff members who looked considerably more relaxed. However, the Duchess of Sussex remained in the office, and Marcus could still hear her voice, though it was now directed toward what sounded like a phone conversation. "The situation has been resolved," Catherine informed Marcus and James. "There were some misunderstandings about the evening's format, but we found solutions that work for everyone." Marcus admired Catherine's ability to diffuse tension and find compromises, skills that had served her well throughout her royal duties. However, he was beginning to notice a pattern in these situations that concerned him. Catherine was frequently finding herself in the position of mediator and peacekeeper, roles that, while admirable, seemed to be adding stress to her already demanding schedule. As the morning progressed, Marcus continued to observe the dynamics within the palace. He noticed that staff members seemed more relaxed when working directly with William and Catherine, but tension returned whenever there were joint activities involving both couples. The gala that evening would be a test of how well these internal conflicts could be managed in a public setting. With hundreds of guests, media coverage, and the reputation of the entire royal family at stake, the charity gala that evening proved to be a turning point in Marcus's understanding of the dynamics within the royal household. Dressed in his formal protection officer attire, he maintained his position near the royal table while scanning the elegant ballroom filled with distinguished guests, celebrities, and philanthropists who had gathered to support mental health initiatives. The event began smoothly. Prince William delivered opening remarks that were both heartfelt and informative, speaking passionately about the importance of breaking down stigmas surrounding mental health. The audience was clearly engaged, and Marcus noted how naturally William commanded the room's attention while maintaining an approachable, genuine demeanor. Catherine followed with the evening's keynote address. She spoke eloquently about her work with children's mental health, sharing touching stories from her visits to schools and treatment centers. Her speech was personal yet professional, and Marcus observed how the audience hung on every word. She had clearly spent considerable time preparing, and her genuine passion for the cause shone through every sentence. However, Marcus began to notice tension building at the royal table during Catherine's speech. While most of the audience was focused intently on Catherine's words, he observed the Duchess of Sussex checking her phone several times and appearing restless. Her facial expressions suggested she was not entirely pleased with the attention Catherine was receiving. After Catherine concluded her speech to thunderous applause, the evening's program called for brief remarks from the Duchess of Sussex about international mental health perspectives. As she approached the podium, Marcus noted a subtle change in her demeanor. Her posture became more rigid, and her expression showed determination mixed with something that looked like frustration. "Thank you for that interesting perspective," she began, her tone polite but with an edge that Marcus's trained ear immediately detected. "I'd like to offer some thoughts on how mental health advocacy looks from a global viewpoint, particularly drawing from my experience in America." What followed was a speech that, while technically on topic, seemed designed more to establish her expertise and credentials than to support the evening's charitable mission. Marcus watched as she spoke about her previous humanitarian work, her understanding of international best practices, and her vision for modernizing mental health approaches within traditional institutions. The audience remained polite, but Marcus could sense a shift in energy. Where Catherine's speech had felt collaborative and inclusive, this presentation felt more like a lecture about what needed to change. Several times, she made subtle references to outdated approaches and the need for fresh perspectives in established organizations. From his position, Marcus could see Prince William's jaw tighten slightly, and Catherine's smile became more fixed. Both maintained perfect composure, but Marcus had observed them long enough to recognize signs of discomfort after the speeches concluded. The evening moved to a reception period where guests could mingle and learn more about the various mental health charities being supported. Marcus watched as the two couples split up to work different sections of the room, a standard approach for maximizing their impact at such events. Catherine was in her element during the reception, moving gracefully from group to group, asking thoughtful questions about guests' work and experiences. Marcus observed her speaking with a young man who had overcome severe depression, listening intently as he shared his story and offering words of genuine encouragement. "Your work gives hope to so many people," Catherine told him warmly. "Never underestimate the difference you're making by sharing your experience." Meanwhile, Marcus noticed different dynamics surrounding the Duchess of Sussex's interactions. While she was certainly knowledgeable and articulate, her conversations seemed more focused on explaining her own initiatives and perspectives rather than learning about others' experiences. During one conversation Marcus overheard, a charity director was trying to explain their local approach to teen mental health support when the Duchess of Sussex interrupted to suggest how similar programs in California had achieved better results through different methodologies. "What you're doing here is nice," she said, "but have you considered implementing some of the innovative approaches we used in Los Angeles? I think you'd see much better outcomes." The charity director, a woman who had spent 20 years developing community mental health programs, smiled politely, but Marcus could see the slight stiffening in her posture that indicated offense at having her life's work dismissed as merely nice. As the evening progressed, Marcus began to notice staff members exhibiting signs of stress that went beyond the normal pressure of organizing a major royal event. Emma Phillips, Catherine's lady-in-waiting, approached him discreetly during a quiet moment. "Marcus, could I speak with you privately for just a moment?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They moved to a relatively secluded corner of the ballroom where their conversation wouldn't be overheard. I'm not sure if this is appropriate to mention, Emma began hesitantly, but I'm concerned about some of the interactions I've witnessed this evening. There have been several instances where staff members have been spoken to quite harshly about minor details. Marcus nodded, encouraging her to continue while maintaining his professional demeanor. For example, when the flowers on the royal table were discovered to be pink roses instead of white ones, the reaction was quite severe. The young woman who handles floral arrangements was reduced to tears and told that such mistakes were completely unacceptable, and that she needed to significantly improve her attention to detail. Emma paused, glancing around to ensure they weren't being observed. The thing is, Marcus, the flowers were actually correct according to the original specifications. The change to white roses was requested just this morning, and there wasn't time to source different flowers without compromising the entire arrangement. This information troubled Marcus deeply. He was witnessing a pattern of behavior that suggested unrealistic expectations coupled with harsh responses when those expectations weren't met, even when the circumstances made meeting them impossible. Has this kind of thing happened before? Marcus asked carefully. Emma nodded sadly. It's becoming more frequent, especially during joint events. Several staff members have asked me privately if there's anything they can do to avoid working on collaborative projects between the two households. As the evening drew to a close, Marcus reflected on what he had observed. The gala had been a success from a public perspective, raising significant funds for important causes and generating positive media coverage for the royal family's charitable work. However, beneath the polished surface, he was seeing troubling signs of internal conflict and staff mistreatment that could have serious long-term consequences for the monarchy's reputation and effectiveness. The following morning brought an incident that would force Marcus to take more direct action than he had ever anticipated in his role as a royal protection officer. He arrived at Kensington Palace to find the atmosphere noticeably different from previous days. Staff members moved through the corridors with their heads down, speaking in hushed tones, and there was an underlying tension that seemed to affect everyone. Marcus was conducting his routine security check when he encountered Lucy Morrison, a senior communications aide who had worked in the royal household for 6 years. Lucy was known for her professionalism and her ability to handle even the most challenging media situations with grace and competence. "Good morning, Lucy. How are things today?" Marcus asked, immediately noticing that Lucy looked exhausted and stressed. Lucy glanced around nervously before responding. "It's been a challenging morning, Marcus. There was an incident earlier that has everyone quite shaken." Before Marcus could ask for details, Prince William approached them, his expression serious and concerned. Marcus had worked with William long enough to recognize when the prince was genuinely troubled about something beyond normal royal business. "Marcus, could I speak with you privately?" William requested, his tone indicating that this was not a casual conversation. They moved to William's private office, where Catherine was already waiting. Her usual warm demeanor was replaced by obvious worry and frustration. "We need to discuss something very serious," William began, closing the door behind them. "There was an incident this morning that has crossed several lines, and Catherine and I need your advice on how to handle it properly." Catherine took a deep breath before explaining. "One of our youngest staff members, Jessica, was subjected to what can only be described as verbal abuse during a briefing meeting. She was brought to tears and has since submitted a formal complaint through HR." Marcus listened carefully as Catherine continued. "Jessica is only 22 years old and has been with us for just 3 months. She's incredibly bright and enthusiastic about her work. But this morning she was told that her research was pathetically inadequate, and that she was clearly not capable of meeting basic professional standards," William added. "The criticism wasn't just harsh, Marcus. It was personal and humiliating. Jessica was told that her education at a state university obviously hadn't prepared her for real-world expectations, and that perhaps she should consider whether this career path was appropriate for someone with her limited background." Marcus felt his protective instincts flare. He had seen Jessica around the palace and knew her to be hardworking, eager to learn, and always polite and respectful to everyone she encountered. What was the specific issue with her research? Marcus asked, trying to understand the context. Catherine explained. Jessica had been asked to prepare a briefing on international children's charities for a potential partnership discussion. She spent 2 days researching organizations, their funding structures, their success rates, and their operational models. Her work was thorough and well presented. The criticism seemed to stem from the fact that she hadn't included certain American-based charities that weren't part of the original brief, William continued. When Jessica tried to explain that she had focused on the specific organizations mentioned in her instructions, she was told that she should have shown more initiative and that good staff members anticipate needs rather than just following directions. Marcus was beginning to understand the impossible situation Jessica had been placed in. She was being criticized for following her instructions precisely, but told she should have ignored those instructions to include information that hadn't been requested. "There's more," Catherine said quietly. After Jessica became upset and stepped out of the meeting, there were comments made about her being too emotional and unprofessional for crying. The suggestion was made that perhaps young people today aren't resilient enough for demanding work environments. This information deeply troubled Marcus. Criticizing someone for having an emotional response to being verbally attacked showed a fundamental lack of empathy and understanding of basic human dignity. "How is Jessica now?" Marcus asked. "She's devastated," William replied. "She came to me directly after the incident, which showed real courage on her part. She was shaking and could barely get the words out to explain what had happened." Catherine added, "What breaks my heart is that she asked me if she had done something wrong, if she wasn't smart enough for this job. This is a young woman who graduated with honors, speaks 3 languages, and has already shown incredible dedication to our charitable work." Marcus realized that this situation had moved far beyond the previous incidents he had observed. This was a clear case of workplace bullying that was affecting a vulnerable young employee. "What are you planning to do?" Marcus asked. William and Catherine exchanged glances before William responded. "We've already spoken with HR, and there will be a formal investigation. But we're also concerned about the pattern of behavior we've been witnessing." "This isn't an isolated incident." Catherine nodded. "We've heard from several other staff members who have experienced similar treatment. People are afraid to speak up because they don't want to cause problems or lose their jobs. We're also worried about the impact on our work," William continued. "Our effectiveness depends on having a team that feels supported and valued. If our staff members are walking on eggshells, afraid of being humiliated for minor mistakes or differences of opinion, it affects everyone's ability to do their jobs properly." Marcus understood that William and Catherine were facing a delicate situation. They needed to protect their staff while also maintaining family relationships and avoiding public scandals that could damage the monarchy's reputation. "What would you like me to do?" Marcus asked. "We need someone we trust to document these incidents objectively," Catherine explained. "Your position gives you access to observe interactions throughout the palace, and your training in security matters means you understand the importance of accurate, factual reporting." William added, "We're not asking you to spy on anyone or betray confidences. But if you witness behavior that crosses professional boundaries or threatens the well-being of our staff, we need to know about it." Marcus appreciated their careful approach. They weren't asking him to take sides or make judgments, but rather to use his professional skills to help protect vulnerable employees while maintaining the integrity of the royal household. "I understand," Marcus replied. "I'll continue to monitor the situation and document any incidents I observe directly. I'll also make myself available to staff members who want to report concerns." As he left William's office, Marcus reflected on how his role was evolving. He had joined the Royal Protection Unit to safeguard the physical security of the royal family. But now he found himself protecting something equally important: the values and principles that the monarchy represented to the British people. 2 weeks later, Marcus found himself at the center of the most challenging situation of his career when an incident occurred that would ultimately change the dynamics within the royal household forever. The day began with preparation for a major joint engagement, a visit to a university to launch a new mental health initiative for students. Marcus arrived early to coordinate security arrangements with the university's safety team. As he reviewed the day's schedule, he noticed that several of the usual staff members were absent, having called in sick at the last minute. This was unusual, as royal engagements typically had full attendance unless there were genuine emergencies. Lisa Shun, Catherine's deputy private secretary, approached Marcus during the morning briefing. Lisa was known for her calm efficiency and her ability to handle multiple complex tasks simultaneously. "Marcus, I need to speak with you about a concerning development," Lisa said quietly. "3 of our most experienced staff members have submitted resignation letters in the past week." This news shocked Marcus. Staff turnover in the royal household was typically very low, as positions were highly sought after and employees usually stayed for many years. "Did they give reasons for leaving?" Marcus asked. Lisa nodded grimly. 2 cited irreconcilable differences with management styles, and 1 mentioned a toxic work environment that has become unbearable. "These are people who have been with the household for years?" "Yes," Lisa confirmed. "Sarah Mitchell has been Catherine's private secretary for 8 years. David Thompson has worked in communications for 6 years. And Michelle Roberts has been coordinating charitable partnerships for 5 years. These aren't new employees who couldn't adapt. These are seasoned professionals who have suddenly decided they can't continue." Marcus absorbed this information with growing concern. The loss of such experienced staff members would significantly impact the effectiveness of William and Catherine's work, and the timing was particularly problematic with several major initiatives launching in the coming months. "There's something else," Lisa continued. "The 3 departing staff members have asked to speak with you privately before they leave. They want to share their experiences with someone they trust who might be able to help prevent similar situations in the future." That afternoon, Marcus met separately with each of the departing staff members. Their accounts painted a consistent picture of an increasingly hostile work environment characterized by unrealistic demands, public humiliation, and a complete lack of respect for professional boundaries. Sarah Mitchell, Catherine's private secretary, was the first to speak with him. Sarah had always impressed Marcus with her professionalism and her genuine care for Catherine's well-being and success. "Marcus, I never thought I would leave this position," Sarah began, her voice heavy with sadness. "Working with Catherine has been the highlight of my career. She's kind, appreciative, and genuinely cares about the work we do and the people we serve. What changed?" Marcus asked gently. Sarah took a deep breath. "The joint projects became impossible to manage. Every suggestion we made was criticized, every timeline we proposed was deemed inadequate, and every protocol we followed was questioned as being outdated or inefficient." She continued, "But the final straw was last week when I was told in front of a room full of people that my organizational skills were clearly insufficient for modern royal duties, and that perhaps I needed additional training to bring my capabilities up to contemporary standards." Sarah's voice trembled slightly as she recounted the incident. "Marcus, I have successfully organized hundreds of royal engagements, managed complex international tours, and coordinated with world leaders and celebrities. To be told that my skills are inadequate, especially in such a public and humiliating way, was devastating." David Thompson's experience was similar. As a communications specialist, he had successfully managed media relations during some of the most challenging periods in recent royal history. "I was told that my media strategies were obviously influenced by outdated British approaches and that I needed to learn from more sophisticated international practices," David explained. "When I tried to explain that our strategies were specifically designed for the UK media landscape and had been successful for years, I was accused of being resistant to change and innovation." Michelle Roberts, who had coordinated charitable partnerships, shared an incident that particularly disturbed Marcus. "I was working on a partnership with a domestic violence charity," Michelle explained. "I had spent weeks developing the relationship, understanding their needs, and creating a collaboration that would genuinely help their work. What happened?" Marcus asked. "I was told that the charity wasn't high profile enough, and that we should focus on partnerships that would generate more media attention. When I tried to explain that the charity's work was incredibly important regardless of media coverage, I was told that I clearly didn't understand strategic thinking, and that my approach was naive and uncommercial." Michelle's voice became emotional as she continued. "Marcus, we're supposed to be helping people, not just generating publicity. The idea that a charity's worthiness should be measured by how much media attention it brings goes against everything I believe about public service." After speaking with all 3 staff members, Marcus realized that the situation had reached a critical point. These weren't personality conflicts or minor workplace disagreements. This was systematic behavior that was undermining the core mission of the royal household and driving away talented, dedicated people. That evening, Marcus requested an urgent meeting with Prince William and Catherine. He presented his findings carefully and objectively, using the exact words and documented incidents that had been shared with him. "This is worse than we thought," William said after hearing Marcus's report. "We're not just losing good people. We're losing institutional knowledge and damaging relationships with charitable organizations." Catherine was visibly upset. "These people have been like family to me. Sarah has been with me through some of the most important moments of my royal career. The idea that she's leaving because she's been made to feel inadequate is heartbreaking." "We need to take decisive action," William stated firmly. "We can't allow this behavior to continue, regardless of the potential consequences." Marcus respected their determination to prioritize the well-being of their staff and the integrity of their work over avoiding difficult conversations or potential family conflicts. "What's our next step?" Catherine asked. William looked at Marcus and then at his wife. "We protect our people and we make sure this never happens again." The confrontation that Marcus had been anticipating finally occurred 3 days later, during what was supposed to be a routine planning meeting for an upcoming charitable event. Marcus positioned himself strategically outside the conference room, close enough to intervene if necessary but far enough to avoid appearing intrusive. Prince William had requested that all household staff attend the meeting to discuss new workplace protocols and communication standards. Catherine sat beside him, her expression calm but determined. Marcus could see that they had prepared carefully for this conversation. "Thank you all for being here today," William began, his voice carrying the natural authority that came with his position but also a warmth that put people at ease. "Catherine and I wanted to address some concerns that have been brought to our attention regarding workplace conduct and professional standards within our household." Marcus observed the body language in the room. Most staff members sat attentively, clearly relieved that their concerns were finally being addressed. However, he noticed tension from the direction where the Duchess of Sussex was seated. "We've become aware of incidents where staff members have been subjected to treatment that falls below the standards of respect and professionalism. We expect in our household," Catherine continued, "we want to make it absolutely clear that every person who works with us deserves to be treated with dignity regardless of their position or experience level." William took over the conversation. "Moving forward, we're implementing new protocols for workplace interactions. All feedback should be constructive and delivered privately. Public criticism or humiliation of staff members is never acceptable. Additionally, personal attacks on someone's background, education, or character have no place in a professional environment." At this point, the Duchess of Sussex spoke up, her tone defensive. "I think there may be some misunderstanding about what constitutes normal professional standards. In many high-performing organizations, direct feedback is considered essential for improvement and growth." Marcus watched as William and Catherine exchanged a quick glance, clearly having anticipated this response. Direct feedback is indeed important, William replied diplomatically. However, there's a significant difference between constructive criticism and personal attacks. Telling someone their education is inadequate or questioning their basic competence goes well beyond professional feedback. Furthermore, Catherine added, effective feedback focuses on specific actions or outcomes, not on personal characteristics or background.